Hey Max, welcome to episode 2 of
Hey, Mike.
the M&M show, I guess as we call it.
They liked it so much we're doing another one. I'm glad to see that we're back.
Hey,
Good to talk to
listen,
you.
we'd like to thank the 5 people who listened to our first episode. We really appreciate it. Max's wife, Max's son, my kids, and my wife. So all 5 of them really enjoyed it.
Yes, yes, yeah. For those listening now, thank you for dialing in again. It's good to be back.
Just makes you want to do another one that quick.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's
so
right.
Max, this episode is really entitled "Mentors in Motion," kind of the non-traditional path to leadership that both we've tried taking, and as well as
Yeah.
I'm sure many of the generations out there want to take, which is great. So we'll kick it off with a little bit of a narrative. So a little bit of the generations, especially the ones we're hiring to, are Gen Zs, right? They're very tech
Hmm.
savvy, very very driven in terms of what they want in life. I read it. It was a statistic that was shared. It said, I think it was a McKinsey one. It said that the Gen Z's path are double, at least double the previous generations of striving to become CEOs in
Oh
their course.
well,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Be careful what you look for though. You just might get it.
And especially if there's 2 of them. Yeah. So the good news is we up the odds, right? We up the odds.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, the traits seem to be, at least in what we're hiring, and we talked to a lot of new hires, is they value the balance of work and obviously their health and wellness, but that's not it. That doesn't mean, at least what we've articulated through our people, is they don't put a less of a precedence on the work. It's just that they strive for that balance probably more so than previous generations, which I think is actually quite healthy. Burnout seems something we always seem to hit, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's interesting how different, let's call it age brackets, right? Gen Xers, Gen Zs, millennials, all kind of approach work and life in kind of different ways. And it's super interesting. I mean, if you think about our company, roughly 100,000 people around the world, we have probably, I think, the biggest swath imaginable of different kinds of people with different kinds of backgrounds, right? So for a lot of our folks, in the United States, that's working at home. A lot of folks, in other countries around the world, it's in a site, right, with lots of other people. So, I think trying to maintain that balance and provide not just employment or a job to folks, but also, mentorship and, a career is something that I think we really strive for.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they asked for in certainly our company is an understanding of career pathing. Um,
Yeah,
what does it mean to join today? What does it mean for be here tomorrow? And what does it mean for me in X years? And how do I get the connections that I need? How do I get the education I need to know how to accelerate that path to where I want to go? And I think if you'd be naive if you were hiring today not defining that, because I don't think the workers would come to your
yeah,
company without that, right? Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think, and you've been really big on this, and I couldn't agree more. The idea of job families, like what your career might turn into, is very different than what you thought it might when you began.
Yeah.
Giving people lots of different avenues to succeed, and promote from within. Like we'd hire nobody from external if we could, and just kind of promote from within because I think that's the best path forward. But I think you're right. Like building out, showing people what a career can be, and giving lots of opportunities, even if it's a little outside their comfort zone, to kind of continue to push the envelope and see what they can do. I think really helps you keep and retain really talented folks. So
What's funny is, I know you and I like to pay attention to all of our feedback. We had the Voice of the Employee
yeah,
survey, which I know you've been keen on understanding what drives that. I mean, listen, we want to keep our tenured folks. We want to keep obviously attrition down. It only helps our business in every way. But what's funny
absolutely.
is, at least in the way I think about it, you and I have a tone from the top attitude, which is the things that we think are important. But what's funny is it gets lost, right, in translation a lot about how
Yeah,
important career pathing, or I'll even say the ability for you to grow within your company because you've got the connections, the sponsors, the mentorships, the people you look to trust. We always seem to struggle with reinforcing that, right? It just seems like
Yeah.
it's the easiest thing to fall off, but it's the thing that's the most important.
Well, and two, I think oftentimes, too often, unfortunately, a lot of the the goal setting or evaluations or feedback that only happens on an infrequent basis is kind of just you just go through the motions as opposed to actually really using it to
Mm,
kind of learn
mm,
about yourself or take feedback or stuff like that. And the best folks that I've worked for, worked with, and had worked for me, I think we've always kind of worked on having that balance where you can talk and you can actually try to improve just to be a little bit better every single day. But that's the whole of good leadership and good, right, is to have those kind of frequent conversations so that it's not a shock at the end of the year when you shouldn't be shocked when you go into performance review. You should know kind of where you stand every minute of every day. At least I think that's how you and I have tried to set that tone. And so hopefully, I think as we go forward in 25, I think hopefully the company takes on more and more of that in their every day.
yeah, yeah, it's uncomfortable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we put some processes in place that when you do it for the first time, it's I would say it's like the first time I met my wife, it was the most uncomfortable situation when I thought she was the most beautiful person in the world, and I'm never going to say a word. Um, but then, I talked a little bit, which didn't help the situation. Um, I'm still married, 33 years, so I'm sure you had the same problem. The
No idea.
it's uncomfortable when you're kind of stuck in this, like you've never had a discussion. I mean, listen, our typical agent knows what their path is, and they know what good
Yeah.
looks like, and we've done so well there. But in our corporate structures, that first time you have to sit down where you say, "Hey, listen, I think this is where you fit, and this is
Hmm.
how you fit, and this is where we're going." And now you have all this change culture we've introduced, and where we're going wasn't where they saw it yesterday. So all of a sudden, there's a lot of discussion, and I think you
Yeah.
just almost have to talk twice as much instead of buckling down, right? So,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think the more frequent and less, in some ways, less structured you can be, the
mm,
better I think those things are.
yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like, we talk a lot about this. How do you think, Mike, what do you think why does mentorship matter, you think, at Alorica? Like, what do you think it does for us when we kind of, if we really do turn that corner on the corporate side? Like you say, the operation side, I think we have a pretty, kind of rigorous
Mm,
process.
mm.
But in the corporate side, I think we have a little bit less so. What do you think?
It's funny. There's my view of mentorship is that there's people you trust who you can see yourself modeling behaviors, traits, and integrity kind of after, right?
Yeah.
You look and you say, well, that person seems to have some success. I can follow them, right? In my head, I can align to their ideas and their logical thinking. So therefore, I can learn something about how they've been able to advance themselves and the things they have learned doing it, right? And there's nuggets in that. Um, but not all mentors need to fit that kind of
Right.
blueprint. You can have a mentor that's like I've had some really good sales mentors that are just egotistical maniacs who just say it's, as the song would say, it's just about me, just about me. I care about me. Which is okay because you know what they're there for. I'm hired gun. I'm here to execute. I know I
Yeah.
want to get paid, and when I do, I want to be put on a pedestal and I want to be rewarded. And the answer is, yeah, sure. So I think mentors can be different, in all different kind of areas. I'll flip it a little bit to there's this sort of headset around those that are mentors and those that sponsor you throughout your career, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes sponsors aren't the same. And have you had those kinds of arrangements in your world, or?
It's funny because I came, when I when I first graduated from college, I was sure that I was going to be the CEO of JP Morgan at one time in the future, and I was going to work there my whole life. My dad worked for, I think, over 30 years at IBM before he retired, and so I had like that kind of same thought. And I remember I've had two kind of mentors at my time at the bank that I've kept in touch with. To your point, they're very different kind of guys. One was, tell me if this sounds familiar, very data driven, analytical, spent a lot of time thinking about the words he wanted to use, uh, very deliberate. And then the other guy was he was a he was more of a salesman, right? And so he, my favorite quote of his that he once said to me, he goes, "You can't explain what you do inside of a minute or 30 seconds. You don't know what you do." And so I think I've had the benefit of having kind of multiple different mentors. And as you say, too, I think the other dimension of it is time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's time where you have more mentorship or where you're a mentor to someone else, and that changes over time. Did you have something similar, or what did you have in your kind of
Yeah,
going?
no. So I do look at these folks who are kind of like the folks I want to learn something from. The I was I personally get a charge out of working with smart people around me.
Yeah,
And when
me
you
too.
feel like, yeah, when you feel like you have smart people, you feel like you're kind of always doing your best at sort of thinking and challenging and pushing. And with
Yeah,
our DNAs are similar there. But then when you think of this sponsorship side, you look for people who, and all, you need, you need a cadre of people who understand what you're capable of doing and would answer the following question: would Mike or Max be suitable for this job? And if they answered it because they knew you and what you did well, because assuming the job you're going for is something that you would want, they would almost consistently say, "Well, I'd sponsor them for that because I know they'd be great at it." Right? So
right,
you
right.
need this, you need these folks of followerships of being able to sponsor you, because those are the people that will likely want to come to work for you and likely want to kind of do great things for you, if
Yeah.
not the company. So to me, I've got a little bit of that. To your mentor point, um, I've had some really bad ones. Um, I thought they were,
You're like, I know what I don't want to do, and what I don't want to do is what you are doing.
that's not it. Yeah. I realize this now, a little bit late, but whatever. Listen, I've made more mistakes than wins or losses. The columns are large, but in some cases you thought they were the best of mentors, but then you realized it was more of a self-fulfilling prophecy for them than it was for you in terms of where they wanted to go, and they thought you being part of it, assuming you were good at what you did, only helped them. And my response is, "This isn't in for me. This is more for you." And I
Right.
found a few more of those people in my career. They just flipped to sponsors versus mentors, and then I went and looked for others. But I've been lucky. The good
Mhm.
news is almost everybody that I chose to be somewhat of a mentor, I've probably been in touch with since I started my thoughts around this in my late 20s. And what's funny, the one thing you always get caught up on, you probably maybe you do or don't do this, it's you companies get this wrong. They assign these mentors internally, and then all of a sudden you think that this person is there for you. But when you're in the same corporate structures as a mentor, you almost by definition all have goals and alignment and things to get done, and it becomes transactional. I
Right.
love mentors from the outside because sometimes it's a little bit like you have to provide all of the context as your lens would see it, so the mentor could be advisory, but they become almost higher level thinkers for you. Instead of, they don't know enough of the context to be as prescript. So they go, "Hey,
Right.
listen." And when my situation, what I felt like that, and I always get more value out of the external view, where internally smart people help drive, the challenge for me. But
Sure. Sure. No, that's a good
you
point.
think that, in today's world, right? We face this, and it's probably be our last bit of a 1 minute or two to follow it up. But do you think work at home, in your opinion, has sort of caused this sort of flip on the need for mentors and sponsors to be a much more important to a new person coming into the business world as opposed to what it was before? Or do you think it's about the same, and those relationships are easier or harder?
So I think work at home is both a blessing and a curse, right? Like I don't think you or I could have the jobs we have without a work at home arrangement, right? Like you live in New Hampshire, I live in New Jersey, and we obviously are on the road all the time. But it's easy, I think, unfortunate that you feel somewhat disconnected, right?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
even though you see people's faces or talk to people on the phone all day long, like there are days I don't leave my house, right? I'm sure the same is true for you. And I think that's a great thing because it allows for a lot more talented people to be in the workforce that have different kind of arrangements. It's not necessarily now about where you are; it's about who you are and what your capabilities are, right? So I think that's the plus. But I think you're exactly right that mentorship and almost arguably more important in a distributed workforce
Mm.
than it is in an office setting because you can always grab someone for a coffee or grab someone for a beer after work. That's a lot easier to do kind of naturally and organically. And I think it's probably unfortunately the first thing that goes when you have people all over the world, right? You don't usually, I mean, like I think you and I try to, and I think we do an okay job of it. Schedule 30 minutes with someone, just talk to them, like every other week or every month or something like that. Um, but I think my view is it's more important. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I do. I actually think it's more, we it's probably more important on both sides to build relationships when you're work at home or when you're so distributed, right? Because you can get transactional so fast that you
Yeah,
almost are left with you're not an empathetical or sympathetic leader at all. Like you literally could just
yeah.
make decisions all day, and at the end of it, you're mentally drained, but you're also saying, well, what? Wait a minute, I've got to think. So
What do you
I
think?
think, yeah, you and I try our best to divide and conquer as much of the even the 15 or 20-minute conversations, whether you're at 8 in the morning or one of the people you and I have employed with us, you like to call 8 o'clock at night. But
Yeah,
you give them the 15 minutes that they need to be given. But one I think there's two things that you and I always think about is we have to be adaptable. I think that's key.
absolutely.
And I think investing in people is in the things that make our people want to work here is probably you've probably championed this more so than me in terms of saying we've got to have a respectful environment, we've got to have integrity, we've got to act the right way. If we're doing all the right things, our people will do the right things. And I think that's probably the key, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's funny because I'm a finance dork at heart, and it's a non. People always think about you say investing in people. The first thing everyone thinks of is money, right? But arguably, spending time with people is probably more of an investment, and builds a better response from people than money, right? Like even if you just pay somebody more, yeah, they'll appreciate it, and it could change the way they operate their life, but they're not going to think back on, man, that was a good paycheck that week, as opposed to a really good conversation. Right? So I think it fuels your team, builds a better culture, and you also get stuff out of it. At least I do personally. Whenever we are trying to build that culture where you want to be, you like you, I feel the same way. You want to work with more people. You want to work with people that have opinions, that say stuff that I always people ask me for advice. Young people, and it's like, you're not invited to the meeting to be, wallpaper. Like have a view. Don't be dumb. And don't just to talk to hear yourself speak. But I think when you invest time in people, you get more of that culture where people feel comfortable and able to help move whatever job or company or whatever thing it is along. So I think that's
I've had the luxury of working in a lot of different cultures, and you have too. But the one thing I walked away with when I left, I won't specifically name it, but one thing I walked away with was this sort of headset that says, if I was lucky enough to be invited to the meeting, then I should have myself prepared, and also I should be able to voice some of what I perceive to be the right answers or my opinion because that's why I'm in the
yeah,
meeting. I think that I think a lot of people join the meeting to be on the meeting invite, but don't necessarily do the second part, which is I was lucky enough to be invited, therefore I must. Someone wants my opinion.
right,
You know,
right.
and it's so I
Yeah,
think that's the key for. I mean, you and I are ruthless about just. I know it's bad to say, but just deleting people from meetings because it's like, well, you didn't say anything the last two ones, so listen, we don't do it in a negative way. We don't really want to waste your time.
no, I mean, if you think about it, right? Like we want people to spend as much time as they can being productive in the hours that they're working, and then we want them to be with their families, their
Yeah,
friends, do
yeah,
other stuff.
yeah.
But you can only really do that because of the amount of work that we have if you really are efficient. But well, listen, I think this is a really good conversation, and I think that's an article by Fast Company that came out that was like super interesting. It was more specifically on Gen Zs and the need for mentorship, right? But I think we both feel pretty strongly that having different paths to leadership matter, and having making investments in your people and your teams or even your peers in terms of building that, like you said, mentorship or sponsorship,
Yeah.
uh, and followership. As you said, I think it's a really, really key thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Couldn't
but
agree
listen,
more.
I think these are great chats. Please, by all means, anyone that's listening out there, my wife, your wife, anyone, suggestions or feedback are always welcome for future episodes. So I guess we talk to you next. If we're lucky to make a third or maybe even a fourth, I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
We're definitely going to make a third, Max, because I bought the software, so we're going to use it. All right, man. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Take care, guys.